But I would suggest for most people, let's say 95% of people, there's some things that you can do right now to improve your current level of physical capability that would accelerate the curve of your results. So that sounds interesting, right? So if we spend the next 3 months doing the same thing you've always done, you can assume your results trajectory to be one thing. But if there's a certain number of things we do now that increases that, that's interesting. So what do those look like? What does it need to be? Well, in my opinion, it's quality of movement, right? So what does quality of movement mean? Well, how well do you control your own body? Start there. And so spending times at the ends of the range, like start there. Don't worry about how much weight you're lifting. Like weight absolutely matters to results, but first quality matters.
So you mean relative to gravity?
Yeah.
Just, okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, no. So, relative to adding more weight into an exercise, like you're saying, I would do 550. Okay.
Right.
But like, how well do you do 100? Mm-hmm. Like, is it a 10 out of 10 or is it a 6 out of 10? Right? Because if we could take it to a 9 or a 10 out of 10, you don't even need to increase the amount of weight on the bar. And you've just progressively overloaded your muscle because of quality score. And the way you think of quality is it's like isolating this muscle to do more work per square inch, right? Or per inch of an exercise. So can I make sure this muscle is actually working at the bottom, the middle, 3/4 of the way up, and the top? Is it actually doing work? And the way you check is like stop. So I'm doing a rep with 100 pounds, okay, or just with body weight. Stop. Is the muscle I'm trying to train actually doing work there? Like actually just go ahead and pause. And like if you can't stop there, which is for many people challenging, it tells you, hey, my muscle that I'm trying to train or I think I'm training may not be doing the work here, right? Because so many people do exercise and their focus is reps. So they want to get from one position to the other position. And they don't care what muscles are doing the work in the middle, if they're doing any work at all. It's like if I threw you a ball, the ball would get from my hand to your hand, but it would kind of go through this arc and nobody would be touching in the middle. It would get from point A to point B, but no actual work being done. So the goal is...
And it's just a function of momentum at that point,
correct.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. So, well, how do we do it? Just like eliminate that to start. And if you can control your own body weight, then you've earned the right to now add a little bit more, right? And I think that's why it doesn't always sound sexy because women are like, oh, this guy says this. And I'm like, if you can't control your own body weight to start, I was actually watching a lady at the gym today and I know her and she's like, hey, I want to build my glutes. So like, okay, show me what you're doing. And she looks like a baby giraffe. Like she doesn't know how to move her body. So I was like, and she's like, oh, this coach said I need to do 300 pounds and put this much on a leg press. And I was like, you're just begging for injuries. So if you've ever gone to the gym and your knees are sore, your hips are sore, or like, I feel worse after the gym, like you're doing something wrong. It's not supposed to be that way, right? And the way I explain is like, that's an old mechanism and an old result. This is a new mechanism and a new result, right? A new opportunity. So we teach you how to do things correctly. We actually learn to control and use your body correctly. Now we can start effectively adding on top of it, right? You wouldn't get in a 100-meter race against an Olympic champion and sprint all out, expect your body to know exactly where to go and do it in a fast way, right? Could you run 100 meters? Yes. But is it going to be mechanically effective? Probably not. But the better you can make it as far as mechanics, the faster you can get to the end, right? And that's really a good way to think of it. It's like, well, the goal is to run the 100 meters or whatever your physical goal is in really the fastest time possible. And to do that, you have to do it in the most effective way possible. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And everyone's got varying mechanics, right? So your mechanics are different than mine, is different than everybody else. So watching somebody on YouTube is not an effective strategy to, one, first select exercises. That's just a horrible idea. And two, to learn how to do it. Like maybe success leaves clues, but really there's a lot that you can, that you need to learn about yourself. And it doesn't take, some expert trainer like yourself or me showing you how to do it. It's like, there's some really basic, simple things that if you figure it out for you, everything else kind of lays itself out.
So if we're talking about, you mentioned before, and I'm paraphrasing, but a hypertrophy signal, a metabolic signal, a neurological signal. Mm-hmm. What would be some of the different, how might we think about that in the gym in terms of eliciting those three different signals? So I think I have an idea, but I'm interested in how you might manipulate those three levers for signaling the body to change and to grow.
So if we look through the lens of body transformation, right? So outside of body transformation, there's obviously athleticism and different goals. But if we look at just like body transformation, there's three primary targets in the body. As you said, there's a neurological stimulus, which is like accumulation of strength. I want my muscles to be better at firing more motor units at a time.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I want a hypertrophy signal, which is, as we spoke about before, is tension, damage, stress. And the last one is metabolic, which is really like asking the body to produce more energy per unit time. So how do we program those things and how do they elicit different results? Well, a strength stimulus is going to be just what you think it is. It's going to be slightly heavier, slightly lower repetitions, a little bit longer to recover, 2 to 5 minutes to recover between sets. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great idea. Hypertrophy, we're going to vary the signal a lot, right? Hypertrophy is it's typically never linear program with hypertrophy. It's what we call undulating typically. So there may be some heavier weights. Maybe it's 5 to 6 reps sometimes. Sometimes it's 8 to 10. Sometimes it's 12 to 15. Sometimes it's more. But we're going to vary the signal, right? So it may be, again, when it comes to hypertrophy specifically, quality score trumps everything. So if we assume that everyone's got the quality score in the right place, then we're looking at, okay, well, now how can I create a variation that allows me to elicit the smallest amount of work and get the biggest result? So we may objectively or subjectively assess your body and say, okay, Stephanie, based on what you're currently capable of doing, you do really well in this 6 rep range. But when I take you to 15, it seems like you fatigue really quickly. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a pretty good opportunity here. If we train this 15 or this 12 to 15 rep range a little bit more, maybe that we can get a better or some result and have your body producing more energy per unit time. Because as you can imagine, once we start getting into longer amounts of time under tension, so 40, 60 seconds and beyond, then the body has to start producing energy faster because it can't keep up, right? If I'm doing something over and over and over again, the body goes, I'm not sure that I can keep up with this. So the next time you come back, it's going to be more effective and more efficient. So we have to find the opportunity, the best opportunity within the confines of those 3 variables that will allow you to exert the greatest transformation shift with the smallest amount of work.
I do also want to highlight that you're saying more efficient, but not necessarily easy.
And we want to work toward the harder things.
Yeah.
We want to identify the things that we're not so good at. Most people are going to be like, hey, I'm really good in this 6 rep range. And that's great. Mm-hmm. You can absolutely still build that in. But if you neglect the things you're not good at, the disparity between things you are good at and things you're not good at gets greater.
Right.
And then it looks like that mountain that you just can't climb. You're like, I hate doing cardio, or I hate doing X, Y, and Z, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it happens to be. So you have to intentionally move toward those things that are difficult. The sooner, the better. And it doesn't have to be an enormous amount, but it's got to be something, right? So I was just talking about if you walked 10,000 steps yesterday, let's do 10,500 today as an example. But it doesn't have to be enormous jumps, but it has to be intentional progress. And this is why I think for most people, getting someone to help you, if possible, is really helpful. Because it's for me, this is my job, it's your job. We sit down to write programs, it takes hours. For someone who doesn't know a lot about it, to sit down and write a program, you can do it for sure, but it's going to take time. And you're going to kind of question yourself, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? So this is why when people create programs hey, here's a fat loss program, and they actually know what they're doing, it's a really good idea to at least learn or participate.